Well, welcome. I am Daniel Morrison, and when I'm not talking about Ruby, I'm leading running a small Ruby consultancy out of Michigan. We've been doing Ruby since about 2005, and mostly Rails web apps, a little bit of mobile, a few other things here and there, but lots and lots of Ruby. And then I also do a lot of Ruby and Rails instruction for Marakana, and have been doing that for quite a while as well. So I think I know my Ruby, but you're welcome to challenge me and tell me that I don't. I'm going to talk a little bit about the language overview, what's different from maybe Java or PHP or whatever you might have used before. But Ruby itself is a very nice dynamic language that was invented in 1993 by a guy named Yakihiro Matsumoto in Japan. He looked at Perl, Smalltalk, Lisp, and he decided he liked bits of all these languages. He liked the object orientation of Smalltalk. He liked how quick Perl was to get started and write a script. He liked some of the more functional programming pieces from Lisp and Scheme. And so he made this Ruby language for mainly for programmer happiness and programmer productivity. He wanted something that he would enjoy coding in, was easy to read, and made him happy to use. Ruby didn't have much of a following outside of Japan, though, until 2004, when a guy named David Heinemeier Hansson, who now works and lives here in Chicago, built the Rails framework. Rails is a framework for building database-backed web apps that caught on like wildfire and really propelled Ruby into the mainstream. Not only did Rails become very popular, it also led to a lot of other frameworks that followed the Rails conventions, and we'll talk a little bit about those. But it also just got more people excited about doing Ruby for other things, for mobile apps, for just plain old scripting, and for everything else. The reason you're probably here is for the Row Mobile track, because it relies heavily on Ruby and can use Ruby in a lot of really cool ways. I'm not an expert in Row Mobile or Roads, though, so you're going to have to talk to the other guys about that. But what I like about it is it gives you the flexibility of Ruby. It takes some cues from the Rails structure and lets you do some really cool things with it. A little bit about core Ruby. I'm assuming all of you are coming from Java, C#, PHP, something like that. Show of hands, like Java, C#, some C kind of something. Other scripting languages, Perl, PHP, something, cool. Cool. Well, Ruby is similar to all of those. It's a C-style language, a Java-style language where you have objects and classes. One thing really interesting in Ruby is that everything under the sun is an object. So our integers, the number 5, I can ask what its class is, and it's an object of fixed num. We don't have any native types. We have objects. And it knows enough to make a really big number a big num. So you don't have to, instantiate numbers, but you can see that there might be some power there because numbers are objects, and everything in Ruby is an object. With numbers, we have all the standard arithmetic. The one weird one in Ruby is the exponent operator, which is star star. So 2 star star 10 is 2 to the 10th rather than the caret. I don't know why. We can probably blame Perl or something for that. Strings in Ruby, also very simple. You just have a string. A string, hello world, double quotes, that's a string. It's an object as well. We'll be able to call methods on this and do all kinds of cool object-y things. And we can use single quotes, double quotes. We also have some weird syntaxes with like %q and other strange ways, but really we have single quoted and double quoted strings, as you might expect. And we also have string interpolation, using, okay, I'll be honest, the syntax is a little ugly. It's pound curly braces, but using that we can insert something into a string, whether it's the result of a math operation, a variable, an entire Ruby expression, whatever it needs to be. The only thing about strings is that you can only do string interpolation with double quoted strings in Ruby. So I tend to just use double quotes a lot. They're cool, but you'll probably get bit by that once with single quotes. We have simple methods in Ruby. You know, you might be used to functions in any other language, but if you think of object-oriented terms, we call them methods. This is a very simple Ruby method. Can everyone see that? Okay, it's kind of small up here. One thing you'll probably notice right away is that there's very little punctuation in Ruby methods and in Ruby in general. We define a method with def and end. So def, my addition, and then we take two arguments, value 1, value 2, and we add them together. We don't have curly braces to denote the method. We just use end to say that we're done. I also don't have any return value, which is really cool. In Ruby, we have what we call the implicit return. Whatever the last thing is in a method that gets evaluated will be the return value. So if I do 10 different things, whatever that last line is gets returned, as though I said return value 1 plus value 2. We do have a return keyword. You only need to use it in a situation where you want to short circuit what you're doing.
But how can you control the flow inside the method?
Inside?
When you have more than one statement, for instance,
sure.
like this one, when you know you are doing an operation inside the method that is not the return value,
yep.
you use the last one or what?
So if I was doing it'll always be the last line you return, or you could have an if statement, you know, if some condition is met, return an explicit value. So in Ruby, we'll usually, you know, do whatever we do, and then just, if we set a variable, maybe just have that return below or as the last thing. If you don't need a return value, you can, you know, it'll return something, but it doesn't matter. You could also explicitly return nil, just say nil on the last line as well. To call a method, looks pretty familiar, right? You just call the method and say, here are my arguments. And in this particular one, it would give us back the number 15.
What about type safety?
Yeah, interesting. There's no idea of type safety here, right? I'm going to come back to that in a minute, because I want to talk about variables first. When we define a variable, we also don't use a type. We just say something like A. A equals hello world. Really simple. We don't need to specify what type it is, and we can also redefine that variable to be something different at a later time. So I can redefine A to be 15. And both variables and methods, we can define them with any lowercase letters. And we saw before we use underscores between words to separate them. So if I had my underscore addition, or I might have first underscore name. We typically use lowercase letters rather than Java style camel case.
Is case sensitive, the names? Or?
Yes, everything is case sensitive. So to your question about type safety, Ruby has what we call strong dynamic typing. It's strong because every variable, this variable A, always knows what it's holding. You know, at one point it's holding a string, and it knows it's holding a string. Later it's holding an integer, we know that it's holding an integer. So unlike like C, where you have to, you know, you're talking about just bytes of memory, Ruby always knows exactly what type of object it's holding. So that's what we mean by strong typing. Dynamic typing means we can change it. So A can be a string in 1 minute, a number the next, some crazy object 2 minutes later. It doesn't matter.
But on that, if A being hello world string, you try to add a value of 3, an integer, there is a runtime error, pass away, or what?
Yep. There is. So if you try to do something that you can't do. So going back to my addition method, if I called that with 2 strings, well, the plus sign is used as a concatenation operator in Ruby. So if I say my addition, I spelled it wrong, but whatever, and call it with hello and world, it will concatenate those together. This is what we call duck typing. If it looks like a duck and it sounds like a duck, if these 2 values can be added together, I don't care what they are. So this is where we see that, yeah, if you try to add a string and a person class or something, that's when you get a runtime error of, can't coerce. Ruby's pretty good at trying to figure out, not trying to figure out, it will do some basic conversions for you. If you try to add 1 and 1.0, it knows to return a float for you. If you try to, add a string and a number, it just will say, I can't do that.
There is a way to overload?
Yep. We have methods we can convert between them. I don't have them in here, but you can convert at any time. There's a 2_i method you can call on a string to convert it to an integer, or 2f for float. And to convert to a string, you can say 2_s. So 2_i, f, s to convert between integer, string, and floats. Those are the basics. No, they aren't, but it's enough to keep moving forward. Because I want to talk about our collection types. Because this is what you're going to see no matter what kind of Ruby you're doing, whether it's simple scripting, Rails applications, Roads apps. It's all going to use our different collection types a lot. Simplest one is an array. An array in Ruby is just very simple. Here we have an array literal. I have two ways we can define a new array. I can say array.new. That might make you feel better, but I don't need to. The first line is exactly the same, just square brackets, some values. I don't have to say how long the array is going to be, and I don't have to define what kind of types go in. To access an array, this should look familiar to all of you. We just use the index syntax. So, A of 2 gives me back the 0, 1, 2, the third value of 45. And if I can change a value with that same syntax. I can say A square bracket 0 is now 1,000, and now my array starts with the value 1,000. Very simple to grab and set values in an array. Arrays can also be polyglot arrays. They can hold different values. We don't have to have arrays of just a single type. This might be scary, but it also is, you're not typically doing this. You can if you need to. It goes back to our not needing to define what the array can hold. We can, if we really want to put a string, a float, an integer, and another string in there, we can. And we can mix and match values, change them around at will. I can change banana to be the number 7. It's just a place in the array. We can also dynamically resize our arrays without having to do any thinking. If I have an array of 2 fruits, and I set the second, so 0, 1, 2, which doesn't exist yet, to be orange, now my array has 3 objects. We have lots of really cool ways of adding additional, adding to the array, removing from the array from both sides, and checking for how big an array is. Yes?
With that standard array of apple and banana, you have 2 items in the array, and if you add fruits as 10,
It will fill them with nil. So yeah, it'll fill all those back. It lets you do that pretty easily. And if you try to access an array object that doesn't exist, it will return back nil. So fruits of 12 will give you nil. It doesn't care how far you go in there.
To further that fruits.length value would now have 13 items in that.
Correct. Yep. So I can call fruits.length. This is a method call in my fruits array. It gives me back 3 objects, or the number 3 right now. We have 3 items in that array after inserting orange into there. I also have handy ways of saying fruits.first to give me the zeroth, the first item in there, or fruits.last to give me the last one. I also can do negative indexing, which is really cool. I can say fruits -1, and it will give me orange, or -2 will give me banana. So just accessing from the other end.
Are those writable? So fruits length, can I set it to 2 and
Nope.
truncate?
No, truncating is, there probably is something easy for that, but I don't know what it is offhand.
There's a delete, a pop, and a push.
Delete, pop, push. You can also like slice an array or just trim it down.
Shift.
Yeah. Lots of fun stuff you can do with arrays. The next and probably most important collection type in Ruby is the hash. Also known as hash tables, dictionaries, associative arrays, and other languages. The hash is probably the most used and abused and loved data type in Ruby. It's really just a key value pair where the key is unique. We create them similar to arrays. We have an array literal syntax of curly braces and then key equal, greater than, and value. So here I have a hash of 2 objects of a key of name, a value of Daniel. Language is another key and a value of Ruby. The little equal greater than sign is a little weird. We fondly call it the hash rocket because it's used in hashes to separate the key and value. But with that we have a simple hash literal. We access them very similarly to an array. So we can say H and use the key name to get out Daniel, the value for name. Like an array, if I try to grab something that isn't in there, so here age, it just says nope, nil, I don't know about that key.
And the key can be anything.
The key can be anything, yeah. This is actually really interesting in Ruby, that your keys and values can be any object. So your key could be a string, a number, another object. If you're making your key an object, you might be doing it wrong, but there are probably some situations where that's valid. Here I set a non-existent key to 10, or I could overwrite a key. If I set the name key, it would override my name and change it to something else. So now I have a new hash with, well, I've modified the hash with the age key and added that in there. I want to mention briefly symbols because they're this weird, strange thing in Ruby, but you see them a lot in hashes. A symbol in Ruby begins with a colon, and 9 times out of 10 they're being used as just a key in a hash. So I build a new hash with colon name and colon age as my keys, and I access them using the colon age. So this symbol, colon age, is not the same as a string. You could kind of think of it as a finalized string or more of an identifier. I really don't know of an exact equivalent in any other language. So if you want to just think of them as, oh, that thing we use for hash keys, you can, because you probably will see them in the wild and wonder what they are. It's not a variable, it doesn't have a value, it's just an identifier we use most often in hashes. And if that meant nothing, just ignore it.
Well, it's almost like a on-the-fly class with properties.
Yes. The hashes. Right. Yeah, you could think of these as just your attributes. But the colon name itself doesn't, in this hash it points to Alice, but colon name outside of the hash has no meaning. Both hashes and arrays can, obviously can contain each other. Hash values can be anything, and hash keys can too. That's a little weirder. But of course, we could insert an array into a hash, and we could also have an array of hashes. That will be very common. So here I have an apple and banana hash, treating them like objects with properties. And then I can build an array of the two of those. And I can even grab out the last one in there. Multidimensional arrays are really just arrays of arrays. So my matrix is an array of 3 subarrays of 3 values. So that could be a 3 by 3 array. Simple enough. The last type I want to talk about is the range type. I think this is the coolest thing in Ruby because it just is a really easy way to represent some range of values. So here my range is the numbers between 10 and 100. And you define a range with ... So 10 ... 100 is all the values between 10 and 100. It doesn't build that out into an array. You can say 2_a and get that array, but it's really just a way of identifying each end very quickly. And you can ask if it includes a number, if it overlaps another range. It's nothing you couldn't do in a handful of lines of code, but it's a very fun data type. What I really like is using it with things like times. So if I had a date for January 1, a date for December 31, I can then see if, today is inside that range, or, some value from the user. So here I build a range of those 2 dates. I ask, does it have today? Of course, the answer is true. If I ask, does it include, 365 days from now? The answer is false. So really fun type, makes it easy to check against sets of conditions. Ruby has regular expressions as well. We create them either with regex new or just the literal syntax with /. So here I've built a simple regular expression with 4 digits dash 2 digits dash 2 digits, kind of a date format. And I can use that to match against strings. So if I have a string called info, the conference runs from this date to that date, I can use equal tilde to as a simple match. So info, my variable info, equal tilde, that regular expression. What it actually returns there is the first index that it matches at. So in this particular one, it matches at character 21. Any non-nil value means it found a match in there. So if it found it at the beginning, it would be 0. And if it didn't find it, it would be nil. I can use .match on that string instead, so info.match to get a value back, or to get a match data object back that then I can call other methods on and get the data out. And there's a lot of other ways we can do match groups and pull data out using regular expressions. Simple substitutions, we have the sub and gsub methods. As you probably expect, sub substitutes the first one. So if I replace in today, it replaces the first date with the word today. And if I gsub, I can replace both dates with the word today. or do something more complex and tweak it in there. I do want to mention this tool called Rubular, rubular.com. It is a regular expression testing tool, and it is fantastic because it's built with the Ruby engine. So you can put in a regular expression, test it out, and it gives you all the different modifiers below. So if you're doing anything with regular expressions, rubular.com is fantastic. And I recently saw something similar for JavaScript regular expressions called Scriptular or something like that. I want to talk briefly about conditionals in Ruby. We have the simple if statement. The first thing you'll notice about this if statement is probably that it has very little punctuation. Sorry if that's a little small in the back. It has if input equal quit. So if my input is equal to quit, I exit. So the if and end are what denote my if statement block, however many lines are in there. I don't need parentheses around the condition. You can put them there if it makes you feel better, but you don't need to. Ruby really lets you leave off as much punctuation as you want. It doesn't like it.
When the compiler knows that a statement ends with the carrier,
Yes, with a new line, the statement ends with a new line. So you can, as long as it's a complete statement, it will treat that as a complete line. If you want to do multiple statements on the same line, you can use a semicolon.
okay.
But you usually don't need to.
Okay, semicolon is the end statement mark.
Yep. You could use them here too. It's just not necessary.
How do you split a statement across multiple lines?
If you can use the backslash. You can use a backslash at the end of a line, or you can do a kind of an unbalanced statement. So if I said 1 plus new line, Ruby knows that that's not a complete statement. So it'll wait for the next line to complete that statement. So I could do 1 plus and then 2 on the next line, and it will realize it's waiting for a balanced statement and find that. One cool thing on if statements is you can do a single line if. I can rewrite the above as exit if input equal quit. That's great if you just do have a single line if statement. Otherwise, you might as well do the big form. But the trailing if is kind of cool. Works the same way.
Can that exit be in like curly braces if you had a code block right then?
No. You would have to, this doesn't work with code blocks quite that same way.
Okay.
We also have the inverted if or the unless statement. Unless is really just anything you would say not in front of. So, if not input equal quit. If you want to, you can use unless. It's just the opposite. So unless input equals quit, we do some work. And again, we have the single line form of that too. I like unless for really simple statements. If anything gets more complex, I usually go back to if.
So there is no equivalent to else.
There is else. To do multiple conditions, we have if, else if, and else. So here, if the input is quit, we exit. If the input is pause, we sleep for 20 seconds. And else we do some work. Pretty simple. The only thing that you will get burned by is that you definitely note the spelling of else if. It is not else space if, it is ELSIF. You can definitely blame Perl for that one. That will burn you once, and then you will curse the Perl guys forever, and the Ruby guys for copying them. Yeah.
Any short syntax for that?
For this particular one,
Yes. For example,
how about this? It's not really, so like, well, what, yeah, that's longer, that's more conditions.
IAF or
We do have the ternary form,
right.
and it's the statement, question mark, positive case, colon, negative case. That works the same as anything else. I do want to point out the case statement in Ruby, though. It's nothing you can't do with an if, but it's a little bit, it can be more powerful and interesting in cool ways. You give it some starting value, so case input here, just some variable. And then you'd have a series of when. So when quit, you exit. When it's pause, you sleep. I can test against particular objects, so I can say when it's a string, and then do something cool. Or I can test against a range. When it is between 5 and 10, do something. Or test against a regular expression. Unlike some languages, it will only match one of these when blocks. It doesn't fall through to others. So it's just going to pick the first one that matches.
There is no fall through in several when.
It will never do multiple, no.
Say when quit full pulse.
Yep, you can. You can use a double bar syntax for or and for and. You can also use the words and or in Ruby.
They have the same meaning?
Same meaning, just less used. To do a loop, we have a simple while. Here we have count equals 0 while count is less than 10. I'm outputting it and then doing count plus equals 1. The plus equal here is a really cool thing in Ruby, but it also shows us that we don't have a plus plus. I don't have count plus plus or minus minus, but we have the plus equal operator. It's the same as saying count equals count plus 1. What's cool about it is you can use it with any other arithmetic operation. You can do count plus equals 10 or count minus equal 5. They all work. We also have the inline while, where you just use it at the end of a line like an if, useful for single lines. And you can rewrite this version as a single line. I output the count plus equal 1 while count is less than 10. That'll actually go from 1 to 9. I'd have to change my count to be exactly equal because I'm outputting it before. But and then we also have unless, which is the inverse form of while. So it works until the condition is true. Or, wow, I totally did wrong there. This is all until, not unless, until. Until count equals 10, or until count is greater than or equal to 10. I will change my slides. We do have a for loop in Ruby for fruit and fruits or for person and people. We don't use it. We do not have the syntax of for I equals 0, semicolon, I plus plus. Yeah, you know what it is. And this one that we have, we don't use. We're going to do iteration the Ruby way, which is this syntax. Fruits.each. Fruits.each do vertical pipes, whatever my variable is inside my iteration, in this case, fruit. So if I have a list of fruits, this will iterate over each one, assign the variable fruit, and output I love apple, I love banana, I love orange. This syntax will look weird to you, and that's okay. But it is the Ruby way of iterating, and you'll see it all over. Even weirder, we can replace the do and end with curly braces. So this is the same as above, just with curly braces in place of the do and end. So we use this for multi-line or single line statements, and we usually use the each or the do end version for multi-line statements. they're interchangeable. The reason that this syntax is really cool is that we have a whole bunch of other methods that we can call on an array, a hash, a range, things like map, each with index to pass in an index counter as well, or each key to go through each key in a hash. And we also have a lot of other syntax in Ruby that uses the same style. We actually use the do-end syntax for opening files, and it's really cool. So actually, what I usually tell when I'm teaching a class is like, just get to know the syntax. You don't have to understand it right now, but get to recognize it because you will start to see it everywhere. Objects in Ruby. We have very simple class person, gives us a person class. And we also have inheritance using the less than operator. So here, programmer inherits from a person. Everything inherits from object implicitly by default. So I didn't have to say person inherits from object, but it does by default. And then something simple like a constructor. The constructor is the only strange method in Ruby classes because you use the initialize name to define a constructor. So now I would say person.new and pass in a name, and it would use my constructor on my class. Any other methods you define in your class become instance methods, and you can also define class methods and scoped methods and everything else you need.
So, I think I read that inheritance only works one level deep. Is that true?
No, no. Well, you can go extremely deep. We do only have single inheritance though, so we can't inherit from different sources.
Okay.
But you can have a minion that inherits from programmer and an intern that inherits from minion, and that will get all the data and attributes methods that you would have on your person class.
Okay.
What's that inheritance? Is it all the values, if there's values assigned to person, or is it?
All the methods and all the
You get everything.
yeah, you don't get data on a particular instance. So you just get like a person might inherit from animal, and so you have what am I trying to say? You don't know the name of the person or the animal, but you have all the same attributes. You might have a name and a number of legs or something like that. Don't know that really.
So,
Might have confused you more.
Values, just the model.
Correct. Yep.
but there is no way to define visibility of methods.
We do. We have public methods, private methods, protected methods. One interesting thing in Ruby is that there are ways of getting around private methods, which can be really useful if you're stuck using some library and you can't. Like in Java, if something's private, it's private for good. In Ruby, you can actually dig in and get around that if you have to. So we have a keyword that we say private, and then any methods defined below that in the class are private, but we can still, if we really need to, we can get access to those, and it gives us the flexibility. I wanted to do, I wanted to do a quick talk on Rails because I wanted to show you a really quick demo of what we can do with Rails. Something like creating a new demo app. I've done this before. If I say like Rails new demo and create a new Rails app, and then it's taking forever. I can make a person class with a name, string, and an age of integer. Oh, cd demo. It's okay that you might not be following along because there's a lot of great info on Rails. What I just wanted to show quickly though is how we can you might want to use Rails and dig into a little bit later because it gives us a really easy way to create simple CRUD apps. So I just created this app /people, if I can't spell people right. That gives me a whole like CRUD interface for creating people. Yeah, what? Create person. Okay. New person. And the really cool thing about this simple Rails app is we have JSON representations of all our data. So all my people that I just created this little CRUD app for, I have a JSON representation of all that data. There's Daniel with an age of 5 and Alice with an age of 45. If I had more time, I would show you how all that works, but I'll save that for another day. What I do want to talk about, though, is using JSON in Ruby. In Rails, we have this JSON.parse object method call. We can pass in some raw JSON. In Roads, it's row : JSON.parse. They work the same way. They have the exact same method calls and interface. What's really cool about JSON in Ruby is this lets us take some JSON with keys and values. So here is, some JSON, name Bob, age 20, friends of an array of strings. It'll turn that into a hash that we can use in our Ruby process or in our Roads app or whatever. So a lot of what we do with JSON in Ruby is converting JSON into hashes. And you can see they even look similar, They're not exactly a slight syntactic difference, but if you're dealing with JSON, it's really easy to see how that'll turn into a hash of data in Ruby. So if I gave JSON.parse this first chunk of code, it would return back this as a hash. If you're using XML, it's just as easy. It just assumes that you have a sane XML file. In both plain old Ruby and in Roads, you can call rexml document new and give it an XML file, and it'll work the same way. The last thing I want to demo is a little tool that I want you to try sometime later called IRB. IRB is what we call interactive Ruby, and once you have that installed, you can do simple Ruby expressions like 5 plus 3 or fruits equals banana, apple and banana, play with arrays. So you can start testing, like, can I call, if I say fruits.length, what was the question? Can I set it to be equal to 10? Nope, I can't. I get a no method error. Undefined method length equals. So I cannot set the length using that syntax. IRB is really cool because it lets you play around with Ruby right in front of you, and you don't have to, you can play around with methods, see what you can do with it.
Can you do fruits.class?
It's an array.
Can you go deeper into that?
Like into
Like reflection, get the methods on it and properties. And
actually, yeah, you can say fruits.methods. It'll give you an array of all the methods you can call. Because it's an array, you can say fruits.methods.sort. And it will give you them sorted alphabetically. You can even say, okay, well, that has a bunch of methods. Okay, this is getting advanced, but whatever. Let's take that list of methods and sort them, but then subtract off anything that's on object.new.methods. Okay, really? And this will give me only the methods that are unique to the array class.
right. Not more than
Exactly. So you can do all kinds of really cool things about, or with your classes and objects in Ruby. There are, for Ruby, ruby-doc.org is the official documentation, and it's pretty good. Their interface is not the best, but it works. It's great. There are a handful of sites that integrate both Ruby and other projects, whether it's Rails or Roads or something else, and they try to integrate all the documentation in one place. For that, actually, I like things built into editors, whether it's one of the Ruby editors like RubyMine or something more generic. A lot of them have built-in documentation, and it is okay. It really depends on the type of project you're building and what you're working on. With IRB, I did want to mention Rails console. It is just like IRB, but for Rails, it's for inspecting your objects inside the Rails environment. It's the same thing, but with Rails. Also, we have a couple ways we can look at data. We have the puts method, puts hi, and we also have the y method. So if I have a hash or something, the y method, okay, maybe they've removed that in my particular version. That's more in the Rails console. It's y is a way of dumping out your data as well. Just forget I pulled that up. We do have debugging in Ruby. We have 2 gems, 2 libraries that we can use for debugging. Both work similar to GDB or the Java debuggers. If you're using an IDE, there'll be something built into that as well, and it will probably use one of these under the hood. But I do want to show you how you can read these errors. Ruby gives you decent stack trace errors that you can, even without a debugger, you can get a lot of data. Like for instance, this error, undefined local variable or method, my method, for some class, isn't all that helpful, but if you wrote my method, then hopefully you know where to look for that. And if not, you can start to look down here and see, okay, well this is from some kind of framework, but down in here there is one line of code that I wrote, because I see that it's in my, my projects directory, wherever I store code, and it's looking at sign.rb:16. So that's actually telling me what file and what line and in what method, in the import method, that there's some method I'm calling that doesn't exist. Other weird errors you can get. This one's really common. It's my favorite. You try to call some method and you get a undefined method for nil. This is my favorite method because you're tempted to think, oh, the first name is nil. The first name on this user is nil. I don't know why. What it's really telling you is that no, the user is nil, and nil does not have a method called first name. So when you're reading these errors, actually take the time to read what they're saying, not what you think they're saying, and hopefully that will help you out. I have a couple links to more info because we're kind of out of time. The official documentation, ruby-doc.org, is your best bet for finding more about Ruby. Also go to the additional sessions on the Row Mobile track. I do want to show you a site called Try Ruby. It's the most cool thing in the world. You can actually try Ruby in your browser, and it gives you a little tutorial about lots of the different language features. So go to tryruby.org and give it a shot. It's a lot of fun, even if you'll never use it again. So, what's that?
Great characters too.
Oh yeah, great drawing. So I'll be around the rest of the day. I'll be in the expert section later. Thanks for coming. This presentation is also online if you want to copy down the URL. And thanks for coming. Sorry that was a little whirlwind tour of Ruby.